Welcome to The Blitz, a podcast from Coram Deo Church. The Blitz is all about tackling tough topics head-on at full speed. Are you ready? Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of the day it is that you happen to be checking out this podcast. My name is John. I am the lead pastor of Coram Deo Church, and I will be your host today on The Blitz. Our topic today is Vexed by the Vax. Vexed by the Vax. And we're going to dive into the issue of forced and mandatory vaccinations. Okay, so our government and our president, our own governor, Inslee, made some proclamations, some mandates yesterday. So I want to dive into that, but I want to say... clarify some things as we go in, because as I watch people talking about this online and even discussing it, there is so much confusion and people conflate things, and I want to try and clarify, draw some very clear lines, and I'm hoping that this will be an encouragement to you, and I hope it will clarify maybe some of you that are struggling to think as you think through this. So as you know, there's been an overwhelming amount of debate and discussion regarding not just COVID-19 and the way that has been handled over the last year, but really around the vaccinations and discussions about, vaccination passports and travel and all that stuff. And there's been a lot of discussion about their efficacy. Do they work? And so I want to say just on the front end of this, that I have little to no interest in discussing the efficacy of the vaccination. I don't know how to answer that. I'm not qualified to answer that. I can look at the same numbers that you can look at, and I can draw conclusions from that, but that's not really what I want to talk about, and it's not really something that I am well equipped to talk about. So I'm not interested in talking about whether or not the vaccination is effective. I have opinions, but they're just opinions. You're better off talking to a well-trusted doctor. In fact, as I've done my research and asked questions and try and understand what is going on, I have paid little attention or serious attention to the media and to politicians. And I have listened more intently to trained medical professionals that are my friends, people that I know, people that I trust, people that they have a life that I respect, and they are honorable individuals. And so I care about what they say because they know me, and I know that they have my best interest in mind. And curiously enough, as I've talked with medical professionals, they don't all agree. And I think that's something that has really been lost in the whole discussion over COVID. So many times people say, the science. But of course, there is no such thing as the science. There are highly educated, specialized, scientifically minded people who disagree. And if we could just acknowledge that there's disagreement on this, with some humility, it would absolutely change the conversation. But because people keep appealing to the science, they think, well, there's only one way that you can think about this, and that's just not true. And so I'm listening to doctors, people that I've trust the care of my own health and my family, friends. That's who I'm talking to. And again, they don't all agree, and that's totally fine, and that's actually really helpful. And I think you need to realize that that's the reality. So I'm not interested in going into issues as to whether or not you should get the vaccine. That is up to you. It should be a decision that is made between you and your family and your doctor. That's what we call liberty and wisdom and common sense. Okay, so if you want to get the vaccine, great. I don't care. If you've got personal thoughts about it, great. I don't care. It just that's not what this is about. What I do want to talk about is a thing that has been unfolding over the last couple weeks, and that is Biden, who mandated vaccines for all federal employees, and that was also followed yesterday by Governor Inslee, who is mandating vaccinations for state employees, people who contract with the state, people who do work on state land, healthcare workers, all of that. I want to deal with that issue, okay? Because some of you are going, well, what's the big deal? Is there anybody that should be concerned about the vaccine? Is there anybody that should, has reasons to not want to get the vaccine? Because this is somewhat like the mask thing, where people are like, oh, if you're not vaccinated, well, you don't love your neighbor and you're putting people in danger. You're going to kill people. What's wrong with you? You're an anti-vaxxer. No. Back up a little bit, okay? So what I want to do is I want to walk you through some of the reasons, okay? And there's more than this. These are just like kind of the main meat and potatoes reasons that somebody would have for not wanting to get the vaccine, okay? So here they are. Let me just list them out. We'll walk through them. They're very simple. You may not want to get the vaccine because it's not yet FDA approved, right? This is not a vaccine that has been approved by the FDA, okay? Now, what does that mean? Well, right now, the producers, the manufacturers of the vaccines, because this has all taken place under emergency orders, they cannot be held accountable for any long-term side effects from the vaccination, right? They simply can't. That was part of the price of speeding up this process. So we don't have, a long established process of testing things. That process has been bypassed because it was deemed an emergency. There's a reason the FDA has a timeline to approving things. And so this just acknowledged it's not FDA approved right now. And so what that means is that when you take the vaccine, you are assuming all of the risk, and the doctor or the nurse that applies it and the manufacturer that produces it is assuming none of the risk. Okay, so you take it, you assume 100% of the risk. The manufacturers assume none of the risk. Some people look at that and go, I'm not willing to enter into that arrangement. Yeah, I know I have heard from a number of people that if this was an FDA approved vaccination and manufacturers could be held accountable, if there was a longer process to testing it and observing it, like there are with other medicines that we take, then people would feel different about it. But right now, people have concerns that this is not FDA approved, and that when they take the vaccine, they take 100% of the risk and the manufacturers take none of the risk, okay? So that's one of the concerns. There's another reason that somebody may not want the vaccine, and that would be they've already had the virus and they have natural immunity, okay? So if you have already gotten COVID-19, and as you'll see here in a little bit, a lot of people have, if you've gotten that, you have a natural immunity to the virus. Now, what's really interesting is that if you listen to politicians, and especially leftist politicians, they are going to talk to you about the tens of millions of people in our country who have not yet been vaccinated. And Inslee's talking about these people who are not vaccinated. And you're hearing language, the pandemic of the unvaxxed. You guys, you should be so concerned about that language, about a particular demographic being blamed for everything. This happens throughout history. It's happened before. It does not go well, okay? So right now, we know that there are a significant amount of people in our country and in our state that have not yet been vaccinated. However, that number of people who have not been vaccinated does not account for the literally tens of millions of people who have tested positive for COVID. So if you go to Google and you look up the numbers for people who have tested positive for COVID in our in our own country, that number is somewhere around 36 million cases. And, I don't know if that goes all the way back to March or that's just to January of this year. So maybe recheck that. But the number that I found was 36 million positive cases. And what we have heard is that there are millions of cases of people who had the virus who were asymptomatic. Remember how dangerous those people were? So we know that we have at least 36 million people. And if you consider the estimations for people who are asymptomatic, it could be twice that much. So tens of millions of people in our country that got the virus, survived the virus, and now they have natural immunity, which studies are indicating seems to be significantly better protection than the vaccination itself. Now, I'm not taking a stand on that. I'm just saying that's what some of the studies are saying. Certainly people who have gotten it have this level of immunity. Okay, so one, you may be concerned it's not FDA approved. You're taking all of the risk. The manufacturer takes none of the risk. You might be saying, hey, I have natural immunity. I already had COVID, and I don't need to be vaccinated. Okay, and there may be another argument. There may be another thing that somebody's saying. They may say, hey, I'm generally healthy, and I've done all of the research, and the reality is that statistically speaking, this virus does not pose a significant threat to me. Okay, so one thing that is incredibly well documented, and you can go and check these numbers locally, and you can also check these numbers nationally. The virus is significantly more deadly for a very limited part of the population. It is non-lethal, highly non-lethal for the majority of the population. And there's a very small segment of the population that COVID is significantly more lethal. It poses a significantly higher threat. So I have been tracking the numbers in Kitsap here consistently since this thing started. I've been watching from day one. So since March of 2020. So I'm recording this in August of 2021. So we are a year and a half, okay? In Kitsap County, since the beginning of COVID, nobody under the age of 30 has died. Nobody under the age of 30 has died in 18 months. 2 people in their 30s have died. 3 people in their 40s have died. 10 people in their 50s have died. 22 people in their 60s have died. 30 people in their 70s have died. And 56 people over 80 have died in Kitsap County over the last 18 months. And there was a point in which Kitsap County Health was reporting some of the details regarding these deaths, and I will say for the vast majority of those, what the county was saying is that almost all of these people had pre-existing health issues or comorbidities. Okay, so what that means is that and those numbers, consider that Kitsap County is roughly around 300,000. I think we're like 285 or somewhere around there. Okay, so there are certain demographics that this virus really poses little to no threat to. And there are some demographics where it clearly poses a greater threat to. Okay, so if you are older, if you are, over 60 and you have other health issues, then, the virus does pose a significant threat. And you may conclude that, hey, what I don't know about the vaccine in terms of long-term, whatever, is really outweighed by what I do know about the virus. And so you conclude, hey, this makes a lot of sense, okay? But you can at least see how younger people who are healthy would look at this and go, you know what? This poses no significant threat to me. And so me taking all of the risk at this point just doesn't make any sense. And so the benefit from getting the vaccination really is contingent. It is determined by your health and your age, okay? Now, people will say, yes, but it's about the neighbor. It's about your neighbor. Well, nobody is being refused the vaccination, right? Anybody who wants the vaccination can get it, right? This is about the issue of forced vaccinations, okay? So you can see, look at the numbers, look in your own community, right? Don't look at stuff, on Facebook or Twitter or social media. Don't listen to stuff on the TV. Go do your own research and just look what's going on, okay? So clearly, this poses a greater threat to some people and a far, far less threat to other people. But here's where it gets really sticky, okay? And I mentioned this before. Yesterday, I can't even tell you how I felt. I watched Governor Inslee declare that all state employees must be vaccinated or they will lose their job. All contractors who work with the state must be vaccinated or they will lose their job. All people doing work on state land must be vaccinated or they will lose their job. And it's not only a state policy, but counties in our state, such as King County, and you can be sure Kitsap County will follow, are now saying that all county employees must be vaccinated or they will lose their job. This is also currently the policy for all healthcare workers. And you wonder, okay, where does this end? Right now in New York City, you can't even go to a bar unless you are vaccinated. And we're seeing places follow suit in Seattle. As a side note, it's really interesting is that when you look at the demographics, the makeup of the people, if those who are not vaccinated, it is disproportionately minorities, African Americans, people of color who are not vaccinated. So these policies are disproportionately excluding people of color from going into a restaurant, okay? Chew on that for a little bit. Think about that. So our elected governor and the people in charge of our communities are now saying, if you want to continue in your job, if you want to pay your mortgage, if you want to pay your car bill, your payment, you want to put fuel in your gas tank, you want to put clothes on your kids and food on the table, if you want to do that, you must be vaccinated. Inslee said this is even forced for people who are telecommuting. Like, if you are working in your own home and you work for the state, right? But you're doing it from your computer, you must be vaccinated or you will lose your job. Friends, you should be very concerned that elected officials utilizing, manipulating, and abusing their power because we are in a state of emergency, that these officials are bullying, threatening, manipulating, and guilting people to get a vaccine that they do not want, or else they lose their job. You should be outraged about this. It angers me. It breaks my heart. Now, let me clarify something here. I'm relating to this as a pastor. I don't work for the state. I don't work for the county, right? They're not forcing me to get a vaccination. This is not a situation that I am being put into, but it is a situation that many people in our church, in the church that I pastor, they are being put into. And I am so grieved and angered and saddened for them. I am so, yesterday was just such a blur. I can't imagine what it's like to be an individual who has invested years of your life working a job, doing your job well, showing up, doing the work, being a faithful employee, to be a healthy individual who has either already had the vaccine or is really not, isn't going to be threatened by the sickness, or they just choose they don't want it, realizing that everybody around them can choose to get the vaccine. Now that these people are forced into an issue of conscience to have the vaccine administered to them, or they lose their job. As a pastor, I am angry about that. I am so frustrated and irritated and grieved by the situation that so many people have been put in by this governor who is abusing his power. He is acting the role of a tyrant. Okay? It angers me. Now, let me say something. I think that where I have landed on this position, I think there's a lot of room here, and I think a lot of people should feel the same way. There is enough room to go, you know what? I got the vaccine. You could say, hey, I got the vaccine, and I actually think it'd be good for everybody to get the vaccine. I think it's helpful. I think it will protect us. I think that would be, overall, generally speaking, a wise thing to do. So you could hold that position and simultaneously say, but I am very uneasy with the government mandating a non-FDA approved vaccination and threatening to take people's livelihood away if they disagree. You guys, you have to feel that. You have to, and you have to see that position, that place. You may personally think that the vaccination's great and that everybody should get it, but can you see that you can hold to that position, that it's good and it would be good for people to get it? Can you see how you can hold that position and also say, but I am unwilling to support a government who will mandate these things? You see, that's the issue, and that's what gets lost in the conversation. It's not about whether or not you think the vaccination is helpful. It's not about whether or not you think everybody should get it. The question is this: should our governor, and local authorities be holding people's livelihoods hostage and threatening their employment to take that away from them if they do not get vaccinated? Are you okay with that? Because friends, that is unjust. That is tyranny. Right? That is not right. And there are hundreds and thousands of people in our own community and millions of people in our country who have now been put in this incredibly difficult situation because of these mandatory vaccinations. There's so many questions to be asked right now. There's so many questions that people are thinking through. What can you do if you do not want to get the vaccine, and yet your employer is threatening your job over it? What can you do? I have to imagine there has to be lawsuits in the work. If I understand right, if you are a federal employee, you have the option of wearing a mask and getting tested multiple times, up to 2 times a week. You may need to submit to that for a season in hopes that our leaders will dial back this mandate, although I don't have any reason to believe that they will do that. I saw this video yesterday by Rand Paul encouraging people to resist. He is a medical doctor and also a senator. I wondered yesterday what would happen if every state employee and every county employee, when forced to choose between the vaccination and employment, just walked off the job. What would happen if a third of the state and county employees walked off the job? What would happen if a third, right? And I'm just throwing that out. I don't know how many people are opposed. I know that there's a significant amount of people who haven't gotten it. So some of them clearly are workers for the state and for the county, and also healthcare workers. What would happen if they just said, we're not going to be bullied into this, and just walked off the job? I wonder if our leaders would walk those mandates back. I don't know. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just thinking through, what do you do? And so for those of you who are in that situation, my heart goes out to you. I don't know what the clear answer is. You're going to have to pray a lot, talk with your pastors. You have to think through things. Consider. I talked to one guy yesterday. he told me he's starting to reach out to a lawyer and figure out, hey, what steps can be taken here. I don't know. I know this is a very, very difficult situation. My heart breaks for all of you that are in this. And my hope is this, you guys. If you're listening to this podcast, right, and you've gotten the vaccine and you think the vaccine is a good thing, my hope is that you would see that you can simultaneously say, I think this is a good thing for everybody. I think it would actually be better if everybody got it, but I'm not okay with the government forcing this upon people. I hope that you can see that that is a position that is utterly consistent, not inconsistent, but consistent with the way you think about the vaccine personally, right? You can think it's a good thing. You can think it was good for everybody, but you can also say, hey, I'm not okay with the government enforcing this. You actually, I'm just shooting from the hip here. Christians live in this situation all the time, right? We think it's good for people to come to Christ. We think it would be better for them, but none of us are signing up to compel people to convert or they lose their job, right? There is a world of difference between evangelism, and forced, the crusades. There's a world of difference between saying, I believe this is good for everybody, and then forcing that and manipulating people into that. I hope that you can see that, because I think what happens is people go, well, I think the vaccine's a good thing, and so therefore I guess I'm for these mandates. But that's not true, right? You can be pro-vaccine, and more power to you if you are, and still object to these mandatory vaccinations. So I hope more people who have been vaccinated will come into that category of going, yeah, for me, I think this is good, but not mandated for everybody. The government doing that is too much power. That is coercion. This is wrong. This is evil. All right, so for those of you who are in this situation now, having to force, you've been forced to think about this and go through it, and your job is on the line, I am praying for you. I am with you. I am for you. Hang in there. We have to trust God through this, but there's also, in addition to trusting God, a time to stand. And so God be with you guys. Thanks for listening to this podcast. I hope it was helpful. I hope it clarified things for you. And this is certainly, unfortunately, not going to be the last time we talk about this. So that's it for today. We'll talk to you next time on The Blitz. Take care.